Thanks so much, Brenden. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that kind intro, Dave. Let me just share my screen again. There we go. And make sure that you can see everything. The wonders of technology and the world that we're living in. Obviously, my first choice is always to sit in a room with you beautiful people, and I love radio. So it's always amazing for me getting together with radio people, because the conversations just spark up, and it doesn't matter whether you commercial radio, whether you are with a national broadcaster, whether you are community radio, large, small. There's so many radio, I call it the radio DNA. There's so much radio DNA in us, the similarities of how the dynamics work in radio stations. So I absolutely love it. But we are here, we are Zooming, and I think the world has been Zooming for quite some time now. So first of all, by way of introduction, my name is Brenden. As Dave said, we have worked together for quite some time. As soon as I discovered ACM and what they do, I've absolutely loved what they do. So have been as involved as I could be with conferences and doing training and that sort of thing. And that brings us to today. I hopefully can share some information. Yesterday, I spoke about selecting your sales team, and today it's about equipping your sales team. So Dave is correct. I have been at East Coast Radio for a very long time, 17 years now, and 9 of those years in sales leadership. And so a lot of my time there is about equipping my team. It's one, which we spoke about yesterday, getting the right people on the bus, and then making sure that they are the best versions of themselves, which is an ongoing task. I want to be the best version of myself, and I want my team to be the best version of themselves. I've been in sales pretty much all my life, but the time at East Coast Radio has been exceptional for me. It's interestingly timed around when I came to faith. So my journey at East Coast Radio is aligned with my journey with God and with Jesus. So I think I've learned a lot from both sides, and hopefully we'll share some of that with you today, some practical information. When going through my notes, I was up late last night just making sure that, that everything was on track and in order for today. None of it is rocket science. There hopefully will be some practical information that you will gain, some little ideas that you can write down that will help you in equipping your sales team or equipping yourself if you're in sales. But it's really not rocket science. It's really straightforward. So every now and again, it's good for us, all of us, to go back to basics. I love that back to basics, where you just get a refresh on what you know is the right thing to do. And then it's little practical tips that we all learn from each other. So that's where we are. I'm going to chat to you a little bit more about Zoom, which I love the screen here. It's, well, I think we've all had that experience of having to go for Zoom meetings when your video is on and when just your audio is on. So I thought this was quite an appropriate picture to introduce Zoom. I think we all go through that time where we had to adjust to how Zoom is, because there's such a different dynamic to being online. And so to the point where the reason I put the slide up here is just to say, in a room, if we were live in a room, I would say, don't wait till the end. Fire your questions straight away. Even if I'm in the middle of a sentence, stop me and interrupt, and let's have a discussion about it. But on a Zoom session, unfortunately, it is a little bit different. So I'm going to ask you to please take notes during the meeting. And if you have anything that you want to ask, I will answer all questions, but we'll do that at the end of the session. So that's the main reason I put that slide up there. And it's funny. I love funny pictures, as you might gather. So equipping your sales team is like strapping a rocket to the back. So often when a salesperson starts at an organization, it is like they're given a toy tricycle and they have to kind of figure things out by themselves. I know when I started in sales, I was given a bunch of clients and I was told, go out there and make it happen. And so that's what I tried to do. But if you start from very early with equipping your sales team with the right tools, and it's not just tools, it's so much more than that, and you'll see that in the presentation. It really does accelerate their growth, and it accelerates the success of the salesperson as well if they have the right tools at their fingertips. There's a quote that I found which is amazing. A gentleman by the name of Robert H. Schuller, and he said, spectacular achievement is always preceded by unspectacular preparation. So spectacular achievement is always preceded by unspectacular, gosh, I'm stumbling over my words, preparation. So what that basically means is we want our sales team to go out there and be phenomenal and represent our brand, but we don't always give them the tools that they can do that. So sometimes there's some unspectacular preparation behind the scenes that we do, which we're going to get into today, to help them be the best versions of themselves and help them represent your brand to the best of their ability. So I always start with this when it comes to teams. Often the first thing to jump into is training and motivation, and some questions were asked in the session yesterday about compensation, and we're going to get to all of those and we're going to chat about them directly. But my start with everything is when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with human beings. You are not dealing with them just as they are in the room. You are dealing with their upbringing, whether they had a great childhood, a bad childhood, whether they had strict authority figures in their lives or whether they didn't, whether they had brothers and sisters or whether they didn't, whether they lived with a big family or a small family, what their first boss treated them like, what their teachers treated them like. And that whole journey that they have is what you will have sitting in front of you in a sales team, in a sales environment. And so my job always is to understand the person, not the people, the person, the individual, is to understand the individual first before you try and start equipping them, because you need to understand where they're at, what motivates them, etc. So the start of the process is to build a relationship. If you don't have one already, is to build a relationship, to deepen a relationship, and to maintain that relationship with them so that you understand them as a human being. Only then can you start to properly equip them. And you'll see throughout this, I love quotes. And one of my favorite quotes is by Covey. And he said, "Seek first to understand and then to be understood." So if we want our sales team to understand what's required of them, understand what their targets are, understand what they're meant to be doing, we also need to understand them first and then build them up to be what we need them to be. And that's part of the process. It's really about having meaningful conversations with them on an ongoing basis, caring about them, caring about their future, their needs, their motivations, etc., and uncovering what those motivations are and where they are in their lifestyle. Are they a single parent? Because I've managed, and I still have on my team, single parents. And it's a different dynamic to manage a single parent. They have different challenges and different pressures, etc. Then there's also people that are more mature in age, let's say. People that are younger in age. People that are using this career as a stepping stone to something other. Is really understand where they are in their lifestyle, and that will help you to work with them, to motivate them, and to develop them. And obviously your management style makes a massive difference. So as you manage a salesperson, there's different types of managers. There's micromanagers, and there's domineering managers, and there's friendly managers, and there's freedom managers. But you have to actually adapt your lifestyle, your management style to meet your team. And once you understand them, you'll understand how you can do that. So one of the things we do with our team to get to know them is we often put together questionnaires where we try and find out more information. So obviously in a conversation, if you're having a one-on-one meeting, you'll have a chat about their life and their family and their home and what motivates them, etc. Hopefully in the interview process, you had those sort of conversations with them as well. So you have a picture of who they are. But there's broader things, some fun things, some serious things. So there's so much information online where you can get great questions. But these are just some crazy questions that we ask to get an understanding. I always say it's like a puzzle. So you can imagine a puzzle with lots of pieces. So when you hire someone to join your team, you might have the border of who they are. And as you progress to understand them a little bit more, you fill those little puzzle pieces until you form a complete picture. And sometimes it's a casual conversation over a cup of coffee. Sometimes it's a serious conversation and seeing them under pressure. And sometimes it's just fun. So if you look at some of the questions on the screen, simple questions that you could ask is, if you could live in any sitcom, so in any TV program, which one would you choose and why? If you had your own talk show, who would be the first 3 guests that you would invite? That's interesting. The other question is, if you could have dinner with anyone living or dead, who would they be? If you could eliminate one thing from your daily routine, what would it be and why? So these are not serious questions at all, but they would start to paint that picture of who the people are on your team. These sort of things you can do in groups, or you can do one-on-one, and it's really just a fun get to know you. Something that I would often do at live training sessions, and I think some of the people in the room have been in my training before, is I would get you to create, since we're all from radio, I would get you, or most of us, I would get you to create a 30-second live read of yourself. So advertising yourself. And then we would obviously pick on various people to read those live reads. And it's amazing what you find out just from people going through those live reads. So that might be something you want to try with your team if you haven't done that already. And then obviously there's other various things you can do, team building and all sorts of other things, but we'll get to those later. So understanding. Then if we want to get to a slightly more formal way or in-depth way of understanding our team, I mentioned this website to the training session yesterday. It's a site called truity.com. You'll see the spelling on the top left over there. And on the site, there's a multiple variation of tests, and generally personality profiling tests, which are available free of charge. There are some paid tests, but there's quite a few free ones. And the free ones will give you a basic understanding of a personality. And so what we have literally just done with our team is we have all gone through the Enneagram, which is the top left on the bottom section there. And that basically gives you one of 9 personality profiles. So there will be the challenger profile, who challenges the norm, always speaks up their opinion, has a strong voice in every meeting. Then there's the improver profile, which sees a situation or a person, wants to help the person improve the situation. They're teachers often, and lecturers, etc., counselors and that sort of thing. So there's lots of different profiles. And this just gives an insight to some information which people might know and some information which they don't know, and maybe is in a blind spot somewhere. And then the conversation is about, how does a challenger work with an improver? And how does someone who's detail orientated work with someone who's very creative and very out there? And it's about how they interact, because a lot of our work is very collaborative. So and part of understanding your team is understanding what makes up their personality. So there are other tests there. There's the famous DISC profile. There's a lot of others. So experience, have fun. I say, if you're in leadership or if you're on this call, pop onto the site and just play around with it and look at the different tests. Find something that you think could work, or do all of the tests that you want to do. And I think as you're doing that, again, you're just placing more puzzle pieces into forming a perspective of who the people are. I had a one-on-one. We have a coach at East Coast Radio that is very skilled in this program, and she has given us feedback on our individual profile, which is very helpful for me. And it's something that made me think about understanding myself. And my personal journey is that before coming to faith, is that I would try be what I thought people wanted me to be. So I didn't have an identity as much as God has placed one inside of us. It was all covered up. So I had to uncover that identity. And even in this process, and I was thinking, preparing for this training, is we are trying to understand our team and our people, our family, our work family, but we also need to understand ourselves. So it's not just letting them do the course or the tests so that we can understand their personality. Let us do, and let us share as well. And in that sharing, again, there's a human connection that happens. And where there's unity, God commands a blessing. So I love that as well. I'm a big fan of unity. So there is one practical site which you can visit. Something else that I think that's ignored a lot in children, but also in adults, is the learning style. So if we're going to embark, and there's some training methods and all sorts of things, we're going to embark on upskilling and equipping our teams so that they can be the most amazing versions of themselves. Do we understand how they process information? Do we understand how they prefer to process information? Because there are 4 basic learning styles. So there's visual. You put it up on a board or on a TV screen. I look at it, I understand it, it makes sense to me, and it makes sense to my brain. Auditory is similar to what we're doing now. It's a mix of auditory and visual. But if I tell you how it works and I tell you the best way to do something, that person who's auditory learning will absorb that information, excuse me, and that'll be the best way for them to learn. Whereas you get those that are reading and writing styles, and they take notes, and they love taking notes, and they make lists of everything, and they, even in their notes, they're drawing lines. And so some people learn best in that way, and others are kinesthetic. So kinesthetic is learning by doing. So if it is a salesperson, they would go best when they shadow another salesperson on the team, watch what they do, but also practice it themselves. They do role plays, etc. So whatever we're doing, we need to understand what our learning styles are. I think on Truity, there is a VAK test, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic. If not, you can just Google. There's so many sites you can find these days, which give you a free test of your learning style. And that's another good thing to start at the beginning of the process, so you know how people absorb. You'll obviously teach one group, but make sure you include all of those elements when you are teaching them. So we finished with the understanding, and I don't mean that flippantly. I think it's a very, very important part, is understanding your team. And then the next thing, which salespeople actually don't like, but once they're in place, they do like, or they might not admit to it, is boundaries. Now, it's a strange thing to say, is we on a call here, we're talking about equipping your sales team, and I'm talking about boundaries. But let me explain. So salespeople are very different, obviously, but there's some similarities, and we'll get to some of those later. But my experience in working with the team is that they love freedom, absolutely love freedom, but they cannot have freedom because there are boundaries in our work. So we cannot sell a 1 hour interview in peak time in breakfast. It just won't work all of the time. We cannot say we're going to change the breakfast show and they're going to speak, or the breakfast show presenter is now going to host the midnight to 3 show. We can't. There's certain boundaries, and I'm exaggerating, but there are certain boundaries in place. So what I find works best with sales team and equipping them is setting strict boundaries and giving them freedom within those boundaries. And I'll chat a bit more about that. But an example that was given to me, or that I watched, Dave mentioned Alpha, so it's a good segue into that, is Nicky Gumbel was, to a degree, the founder of Alpha. And he tells a story of going to his son's soccer practice. And when he showed up, the regular teacher wasn't there, and there was a lot of young boys around. So he thought, oh, well, we don't want them to miss out on time. So he said he'll referee the match. So he got the match together, and they just started the game. But now all the boys were wearing the same kind of clothes. He couldn't tell which team was which. He didn't really know the rules. He kept blowing the whistle at the wrong time. They would run out of the line. When they kicked a goal, it would go over the line, and some people would say it was a goal, and some people would say it wasn't a goal. And then the actual soccer teacher showed up, and he marketed the field. He told the goalie where to stand. He knew the rules. He blew the whistle at the right time. And Nicky Gumbel's question was, do you think the boys had more fun before, when he was the ref, or do you think they had more fun when the boundaries were put in place? And the clear answer is when the boundaries were put in place. And it's like that with salespeople. And I liken it to a soccer pitch. And there's lots of rules when it comes to soccer, and there's a ref. But within that, there's amazing freedom. And there's some phenomenal soccer players. And I'm not going to open up the debate about the best teams, because I know there'll possibly be some passionate soccer lovers here. But we're not going to open that debate. But you look at the most talented soccer players, they operate with extreme talent, but within those boundaries. And salespeople need those boundaries as well. And they need the management to put those boundaries in place so that they don't have to think about them. And it's things like pricing, guidelines, the rules and regulations, which not everyone enjoys, but we have to stick to put packages together, to set boundaries around dress codes and punctuality, and all of these things that make part of business life and sales life. But we need to set those boundaries. I do have to say that generally, salespeople don't respond very well to micromanaging. What a lot of managers do is they go to the opposite extreme. They don't just set boundaries. They would, using the soccer metaphor, they would stand next to the player while he's trying to play, and they would run alongside him and say, Don't kick that ball. No, pass to that person. No, do that there. Don't do that there. No, what are you doing? Do that. And that doesn't allow a player to play their best. It doesn't allow a salesperson to play their best. So you need to find a way of setting structure in place without being a micromanager, where you're managing all the little details. You need to give some freedom and some responsibility, and that's where you'll see your salespeople thrive. So hopefully that point is clear. And now, whenever we think of equipping your salespeople, this is the first topic that people normally go to, which is training and tools. Those are generally the first things, and we will cover those. But training is absolutely essential. When someone starts with the organization, obviously that initial training is essential for them to understand the organization in general, how everything works, who everyone is. If you have systems and policies and procedures and pricing, what the shows are, who the presenters are, all the details of that, they have to have that good product knowledge. That's the starting point. And then from there, you've got to develop them, and it's got to be an ongoing training. I think people can absorb different amounts of information at different times. So you've got to measure their response and how much they absorb over a period of time. From our perspective, product knowledge is exceptionally important to us. So we have 3 appraisals every single year. So every 4 months, we do an appraisal of the sales team. We measure them on their performance, obviously their sales performance. We measure them on customer service. But one of the things that we measure them on is product knowledge. And we really do expect their product knowledge to be of a very high level. And there's a ranking system that we use to measure their product knowledge. And how we do that is Mondays are our sales meetings. So it's good to start at the beginning of the week. So we do an 8:30 to 9:30 sales meeting. We discuss all the things that we need to discuss. And then at the end of that meeting, we have a quiz. And the salespeople don't like it, but they know that it's coming. And it's based on information that we covered in the last week. So if we shared a new package or a new proposal or something along those lines, the quiz will relate to that. So if, like for example, Black Friday is coming up, which is a big time of year for us from an advertising perspective, we'll put some Black Friday packages out, we'll present them to the team, and then the following week they know those questions will be in the quiz. So it just helps them remember to take the training seriously and absorb the information, and we measure that. But that is just one line of training. The next thing to build on from that is obviously their sales ability. So we need to train our team and sharpen their skills. Like I said at the beginning of this, it's always good to go back to basics. So every now and again, we have a back to basics. So probably every 3 months or so, we have a back to basics training. It could include the sales process. So how do you phone a client and find a lead? How do you have that first meeting where you're doing a needs analysis? How do you put a quote together? How do you put a campaign together? That whole process, we do a refresher. It could be presentation skills. It could be a variety of things. But we keep coming back to that because we see training as important. So it's product knowledge, it's sales ability. And then the next one is a little bit more difficult. You can do it, and I've got some ideas, but we call it business acumen. So it's not only reading the morning newspaper and understanding what's happening on the news or reading the News 24 website. It's about having a meaningful conversation with a business owner. And that's something I think a salesperson also has to take ownership of themselves. In that if I have a conversation with the leader of a company and maybe he's got 50 staff, he's coming out of COVID-19, he's starting to recover, I need to be able to have a business conversation with him, not just please buy this deal, please buy this package. I need to understand his business, what makes it work. Because once I understand his business in totality, I'll be able to hopefully help him with a solution that'll help his business grow. So we'll get to some practical tips about how we do that. But understanding business, we've got an unofficial title at East Coast Radio called Trusted Business Advisor. And it's something that we use as a filter to think of our salespeople. Is we don't want them to be a salesperson, we want them to be a trusted business advisor. The example that I use, and I'm very privileged to say this, was a company based in KZN that became a very big national company, and they used to have a media day. And what they used to do is invite all of the different media, so from outdoor to press to radio to TV to all sorts, to come and present to them in back-to-back presentations. And I had built such a great relationship with that client. I'm still friends with them today, where they would invite me to sit in for the whole day. And at the end of the day, they would ask my opinion. What did you think about the press solution? What did you think about the outdoor billboard solution? But because I had done a lot of work in building my profile with them and building trust with them, that they could trust my opinion, that I didn't just understand my solution. I understood their business and I understood the media landscape in general. It's a long process, not an easy thing to do, but we're going to chat about that. And what you see on your screen is a start. It's a start. So there's lots of opportunities here. I'm going to mention briefly each one. These are just some of my favorite. We live in a digital world, so there's so much information out there. My challenge is finding quality information. So the sites that I've shown you is where you'll find quality information. You'll need a little bit of help on YouTube, but I'll get to that. But LinkedIn Learning is probably one of my favorite platforms for learning. It is a paid service, but you do get 30 days free of charge, and you can do a huge amount of learning in that 30 days, especially if you structure it. There are such a massive variety of topics that are covered on LinkedIn Learning. And there's a vetting system. So if there are video trainings on LinkedIn Learning, you know that they've gone through a quality control. We went through as an organization where we did some LinkedIn Learning and the team absolutely loved it. What I like about it is you can choose your own topics. So you can search for any topic, and they have so many, and you can choose a topic that works for you. And the nice thing about it is in probably 1 to 2 minute video segments. So the whole course might be an hour, but it is short videos covering a different topic each time. So you can pause the process and you can continue later if you need to. But I would highly suggest that you set aside regular time, either as a team or as an individual, for you to sit together and watch videos. You'll have to agree. Maybe there's a voting system. Maybe the manager decides, or whatever the next focus or the next season is bringing. Or there's a weakness in the team or a strength in the team. So choose your topic, sit together, watch the videos, and then discuss them. Pause it maybe halfway or maybe at the end and have a meaty discussion. But in those 30 days on LinkedIn Learning, you can really take advantage. Obviously, there's paid versions, so if you have budget available, you can do that. My opinion is there's so much free training online. You don't actually need to pay. The only time you would need to pay, and this is my central little icon, is when you bring a trainer in. So if you've got a very specific challenge or a very specific need, you would bring someone external in that they would be able to address that need, because a LinkedIn Learning or TED or YouTube can't assess a person. They can't assess a team member. They can't assess a culture. A trainer, a qualified trainer will help you do that. But LinkedIn Learning from a learning perspective is amazing. TED is another one. There are so many amazing TED Talks that are available out there. And you know that for them to get onto that TED stage, they've got a great message. So you know that the quality is already there. TED is freely available on their website. If you Google, I think it's TED.com, but there's all sorts of TED Ed and TEDx and all sorts of things. Tons of phenomenal videos. Also fairly short, some of them 10 minutes, some of them sort of 20 or 30 minutes, but great learning and sales specific learning, which is awesome. Allison, Skillshare, and Coursera are all online learning platforms that have some free courses, or they have a 1 month or a 2 month trial period. And again, the quality of the training on those courses is exceptional. So those are good to check out. And then the last one is YouTube. I think you can find anything on YouTube. I think if you Googled 3 completely unrelated terms, you would find a video of that on YouTube. So the challenge is obviously finding quality, but it's very easy to find quality. All you need to do is go onto review sites and go onto other websites. So I found this one very easy, the 34 best sales training videos on YouTube. And then you can go through there and it gives recommendations where you can see who the person speaking is and what the topic is. But again, as an individual, as a salesperson, if there are salespeople listening today, take authority of your own learning. Find time, make time, carve out time in your calendar to do that. And if you're here in sales leadership and management, then carve time out in your sales team's diary to build themselves. It can only help. There's nuggets of information that you're getting from world-class speakers and authors, which you can really put to great use. So I highly recommend that. So the next thing is podcasts, and it kind of lines up with ownership of a sales team taking ownership of their own development. And so podcasts are on-demand audio, and these are podcast channels. and there's a list of the top 22 there. They are all up to date. It's from a website called Brain Shark. So you can take a screenshot of that or take a picture of that, or you can just Google best sales podcast for 2020. But these are a variety. Some of them are more casual. Some of them are very practical. Some of them for management. Some of them are for customer service. There's a variety there. But those are things that you can put onto your phone or put onto your computer. And when you get an opportunity to have a listen, salespeople often spend a lot of time traveling as well. So I find that podcasts are great to listen to when you're traveling, because it fills those gaps. So you're learning something while you're driving. Just make sure you're concentrating and not veering off the road. But some really great podcasts. I've listened to a few of those. They're really good. And then the next thing is reading. So whether you like reading digitally, whether you don't like reading, or whether you know you should, but you haven't gotten around to it. I know reading can sometimes, some people absolutely love it and some people struggle with it, especially if it is a nonfiction. So if it's a leadership book. One of the most famous quotes about reading is that not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. A lot of people that read are not in leadership, but every single person that is a successful leader, and we're talking about big company leaders, etc. They Okay, there we go, there's mute. So we're just going to make sure that reading is on our calendar. If you struggle to read, there are audiobooks, and there's a website I think called Audible. There's a website called Spotify. They also have audiobooks, etc. But you can Google, but those are some of the best business books that are out there right now. Obviously, they're all on different topics, so you can choose a topic that works for you. But again, that's for self-development. It's something that you can do in your own time. On the weekends, set aside some time for reading. It's good for your brain. It's good for your sales ability. But something that I came up with, because you know what, these books are extremely expensive. And I had looked at buying some books, and they are hundreds and hundreds of rands, and not everyone can afford hundreds and hundreds of rands. So I came up with an idea for our company, which we're going to be starting very soon, which is a shared library. So most of the time, for people who enjoy reading, at least, even people who don't, they end up buying one or two really good business books or motivation books or something along those lines. So we all have those books lying somewhere that we've maybe read once or haven't gotten around to reading. So my idea is a shared library. Obviously, you have to do it with people that you can trust, because you don't want your books to disappear. But you bring your books together and you have a mini book club meeting, and you look at the variety of books that are available. And then there might be a book that someone else brings to like Simon Sinek. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan. If you don't know him, he's a great author. And it's about people, understanding people. He's got a book, Start With Why, is a great book to start with. And so you might want to start a book club at the office, and you bring all your books together, take note of who takes what, so the books don't disappear and people say, no, I don't have that book. But it's a great way not to spend any money, but to get a book, and then you come back after a week or two. Hopefully you've read the book after then. If you're a slow reader, then you can take a bit longer, but it's a great way to share information and to equip the team. So reading and podcasts. All right. So the next step is more for the leaders in the team. And then also for the senior salespeople in the team, people who've been there for a long time. So I told you I love Simon Sinek. So there's a beautiful quote from him. A mentor is not someone who walks ahead of us to show us how they did it. A mentor walks alongside us to show us what we can do. And that's really true. It's about the learning that a mentor has had in their journey, them putting their arm around someone and helping them discover their potential, learn from the mentor's mistakes and from the mentor's successes, and to help them grow. So when it comes to equipping your team as a leader in the team specifically, but like I say, also a senior person in the team, you need to take responsibility for those next to you. Some of the most successful teams, there was a study done at Google where they looked at different teams that worked there and which were the most successful teams and why. And initially they struggled to find out what it was, but after many years of doing that research, they found out it was the teams that helped each other and gave each other an equal share of voice that were the teams that did the best. So you see it around the world. I know in military teams, that's often the thing, is that the teams like the SEAL teams and the Marines and that sort of thing. I've watched some videos on them. The guys that succeed the most and that are the most persistent and the most resilient are the ones that help their teammates and their teammates help them. So mentoring is very, very important. It's a learning that I had to have in my leadership, in my team, is that I can help them with the practical things. I can tell them ideas and come up with situations, but I need to make an effort to go back into my history and learn from my mistakes and learn from my successes and share that information either to a team or on a one-on-one basis, and share information that will help them discover their potential. So when it comes to equipping your team, mentoring is absolutely essential. So the next step up is, when it comes to equipping a team, is motivation. So a happy and a motivated salesperson can do so much and is super successful, but a demotivated salesperson is very difficult to get moving and motivated. So the first thing we mentioned at the beginning, the first slide that we covered, was understanding. Once you understand the individuals on the team, it will be easier to motivate them. And the other thing is, different people are motivated by different things. So the question you can ask is, what motivates you? What gets you excited? Some people love just being acknowledged. If they're bringing a great deal or they're the top salesperson for the month, they love being acknowledged, and that motivates them. Other people would like to receive a prize or an award. Other people would love to go out on a team building excursion, and that motivates them. So you have to understand your team before you know how to motivate them. Obviously, you learn that in conversations, and you can ask them what motivates them, and then you can move on to the more practical things. So there's some loose examples. Obviously, a lot of the stuff you're probably doing already. It's some of the things that we've used quite well to get motivation happening in our team. And for the most part, it's not expensive. So we don't have, like everyone these days, don't have unlimited budgets to do whatever we want. We're under pressure like everyone else is financially. So you can do creative things. You can create a certificate and make an announcement at a staff meeting and saying, this salesperson brought in the most sales for this month, so they're the salesperson of the month, they get this certificate. And it can't be a casual thing. It's got to be something that's credible and achievable. It could be a customer service award. It could be a new business award. But it's great to reward people for good behavior. It really is a good thing. And salespeople, I'm generalizing, but love to get awards and certificates. Generally, we're very competitive people. The other thing that we do at East Coast Radio is we give vouchers or gift certificates out as prizes. They don't have to be a high value. It's really just a token thing. Some things that have worked well are a spa voucher or a manicure voucher. Some men are metrosexual and they might also like a manicure voucher. But then there's also restaurant vouchers and sports tickets. And so we've given tickets to rugby and tickets to soccer and that sort of thing, which the individual value of those is quite small, but it's more the sense of achievement, and it's something small. It's the thought that counts. The other thing that we've done, which hasn't cost us anything at all, is that the managers have got undercover parking close to the entrance. And what we might do is put an incentive out where we say, listen, the top sales for this quarter will get the managers parking for a week or a month or a day or whatever it is. And that costs us absolutely nothing. But you can see when they walk in from their car or whatever, it puffs their chest up, and they love that kind of thing. So there's lots of creative little ideas that you can do. The other thing that we do sometimes is time off work. So if they've had an exceptionally good week, and they brought in lots of deals, we might say, listen, Friday afternoon you can take off, or they might have time with their family at a particular time. We'll give them extra time off for that. So time off is another great reward, especially these days when we are so busy. And then obviously there's team building. Team building can take different forms, but it's a weird thing. It can be practical, and you can make it practical, and you can make it around building their product knowledge and promoting the company values and the vision. And a lot of companies do that. But that's not the value in team building. Team building is the guy at the bottom of the pyramid, knowing the guy next to him on the bottom of the pyramid that much better. And that for me is all the team building that you need. They get to see that the person that sits in the finance department, or the program manager, or the presenter for that matter, is a human being with challenges and good things and bad things. And when you're dealing with them on a day-to-day basis and you understand them as a person, that creates a stronger bond. And a team that works well together in collaboration is a team that's going to be successful. So if you want to equip your team, make sure you do some team building stuff. Obviously, it is very budget dependent. We're very fortunate in that some sales conference, the first sales conference we had was at the Palace of the Lost City. And that's all very extravagant. Other things that we've done is just gone outside on a Friday afternoon as a team and just had a conversation and opened a few packets of chips and peanuts. So it doesn't have to be big, elaborate things. It really is about the time and the effort that it takes just to get the team built and understand your colleagues. So team building is very important for equipping your team. So this is one of my favorite things to do. It's something that I invented. It's probably not original at all, but it's something that I invented when I ran a small group. And often what would happen in a group setting is that people wouldn't necessarily share everything. So I ran a small group that related to our church. So something I came up with was milkshake meetings, hence the beautiful milkshake and the sweet stuff on the table. Also, I love sweet stuff. So whenever you can mix something good with sweet stuff, I'm all over it. So milkshake meetings it's like a one-on-one, but out of the office. And it really is more about the person than a practical need. It's not to find out about their pipeline or why they're struggling or anything like that. It's just to find out how they're doing. And generally those meetings would start with a milkshake and maybe a slice of cake and a chat, and then it would move on to the conversation. And it would start similarly in that it would be, how are you doing? Oh, no, I'm great. Things are fine. Things are fine. They would finish going through their usual thing, like the pre-rehearsed thing that we do when people ask us how we're doing. And then I would ask them, how are you really doing? And generally there would be a pause, and then there would be an opportunity to share. And oftentimes people are quite open, and they would share possibly about difficulties that they might be having at home or at the office, or they're having a problem with someone, or they're stressed, or they're happy and motivated, or whatever it is. But I just find a time away from the office where you have a real and a sincere conversation. Again, allows you to understand, allows you to connect with the person. And if you're wanting to equip them and you don't know what's going on in their life, you could be doing the most amazing training, the most amazing motivation speeches and videos and everything, and it just doesn't seem to be working. But if you don't understand and connect with the person on a deeper level, it could explain what they're going through. So yeah, milkshake meetings is a practical way to do that. All right, so speaking of practical, we're going to get a little bit more practical now and talk about tools. When it comes to equipping your team, they do need to have the right tools. Tools are very, very important. It does make a salesperson more professional and more effective in what they do if they have the right tools. And obviously they're representing your brand. So you want them to represent their brand, your brand, to the best of your ability. So there's a quote here that says, give ordinary people the right tools and they will design and build the most extraordinary things. And I add a level onto that. If you've got extraordinary people that work with you at your sales team, if you give them the right tools, can you imagine what they can achieve? So that's very, very important. I've always tried to give the team the right tools, and from a practical level, and obviously everyone's company situation is different. The story that's told at East Coast Radio was just after I started. East Coast Radio, I think, has been running for 24 years now. And the stories are, there are some people at East Coast Radio that were working for East Coast Radio back then, 24 years ago. They're still here, which is very interesting. But they would tell the story how there was one computer on the sales floor. And so they would have a bunch of salespeople, and you would have to book your session. So you would have to book your half an hour or hour, and then you would have to try and figure out how this computer thing worked. And obviously we've progressed as technology, and there's all sorts of technology available, but it really does come down to what you have available and what you can make work. So from a practical level, to have a computer these days to operate as a salesperson is almost an essential. Whether it is a shared computer or whether it is their individual computer, it is really important in the age of technology that we're living in, is we need to gear ourselves up to make sure that we are on track with where our customers are. Our customers are operating in that same space. So we need to try and get that. So like I say, it could be a shared computer as long as you manage access to that so that everyone gets a fair share, but it is essential. I mean, it's a basic thing to say, but it is. Notepads I also find are something that are fairly inexpensive and very important. Two stories is, one story is, unless you have an exceptional memory, if I go to a meeting and a salesperson does not walk in with a notebook and a pen, I get very upset, because the human brain, like I said, unless your memory is phenomenal, the human brain can only retain so much information. So if you have an hour-long meeting with a client and then you don't take notes, guaranteed you will forget information unless you have that audiographic, photographic memory. So notepads are essential. It is something as a company we should provide if we can. You can buy in bulk and it costs you next to nothing. And if possible, budget dependent, be great if your brand could be on the cover of that notepad. We often double up with our notepads. We'll place a large order so that the pricing is quite low per notepad. And we will use that for notes. Obviously, anyone in the company would use those for notes, but we also would give them out to clients as gifts because they're a reminder, obviously, of your brand. Such a simple thing, but just it works for us. Business cards are also, unfortunately, an essential part of today. It's not going to be like that for longer with technology and phones and all of this kind of thing, but South Africans for the most part are still quite traditional, and business cards are still part of our lives. They're not as much as they used to. Those of us who are a little bit more mature remember those big Rolodexes with just like endless cards. Some people still have those, some people don't. You can scan cards with phones and all sorts of things now. A lot of people do communication on email and WhatsApp, so you've got the person's contact details, but I still think a business card is a good representation. So if you're meeting a client, especially for the first time, and you want to leave them with a representation of yourself so that they can remember you, a business card is a good way to do that. And the other thing to do with business cards is make sure that it's, not make sure that it is, I encourage your business card to be memorable. You don't want it to be sitting at the bottom of a dusty drawer and not achieving what you want it to achieve. You want it to be quite clever and memorable. Obviously, there's a cost that's involved to that, but they're clever things that you can do. There's companies that have been around for a very long time, and they might actually get a piece of aluminium or a piece of metal, thin, cut quite thin, but they get their business card printed on that. And the message that they're leaving behind is our business has been around for a long time. We plan to be around for another long time. So that's why our business card is as solid as it is. It could be that there's a hole cut in the middle, and it could be around advertising. The gap in your business is marketing. We want to fill that gap. So there's lots of little creative things that you can do that are fairly inexpensive to make your business cards a marketing tool and make it memorable. I've put a folder there. Briefcases used to, when I started in sales, briefcases were the thing, and you had to have a nice briefcase, especially a black one or a leather kind of print, like a buffalo skin or something crazy like that. I don't know, but briefcases are not the thing now. Now it is a folder. So folders are great because obviously if you go to see a client and you've got papers, etc., you want to hold a stack of papers or shove them in a diary or something like that. We're trying to represent the best version of ourselves. So a folder, a media kit. I know not all radio stations do this, but it's something that works exceptionally well for us. Is to put a document together that captures the highlights of what your station offers. So you want to chat about the culture of your station, you want to chat about your products, if you want to chat about your listeners, who they are, what defines them, if you want to put the quantity, you want to chat about your social media, anything that represents the best version of yourself. You want to put into a media kit, and you want to make sure it looks slick and professional. We equipping our salespeople so that they can go out and make more sales. To make more sales, we need to represent ourselves as professional. And I know, having been onto a lot of the community station, radio station websites, they've got amazing websites. So we want to represent that brand in a physical medium that the client will have in front of them. So that's why we do media kits. We have an email version, and we have a physical printed out copy. Proposals is another thing. I've come across a variety of proposals. I'm talking about a physical document that you would present to a client. A variety of proposals. Some radio stations don't take a huge amount of time. They focus on the verbal kind of communication of that, but oftentimes a client will need a physical document or an email version of that document. And again, like the media kit and the business card, it's a representation of your station. So that you want to, and if you've got someone who's got an eye for design and a flair for wording, it's very easy for you to put something like that together. There's a website called canva.com. So if you don't have a designer in your organization, this website, canva.com, they have templates for everything and for free. So if you want to create a quote template, you can do it on there. If you want to create a proposal template, if you want to create a company profile, if you want to create a birthday invitation, there's so many things that they have. Canva.com, it's an amazing website, check it out. Lots of free stuff available on the net. I love free stuff. So you can go and design some phenomenal proposals on that. Or like I say, if you've got someone in-house, just make sure it is polished and professional. Client gifts are great if you can afford them. If you can't, then there's obviously various reasons, but it's a reminder. So I like to give a gift to a client that's going to keep my brand or my name top of mind for them. At one stage, we did a branded water glass, which could sit on their glass, and for clients who drink water, it's a constant reminder. Obviously, calendars or notebooks, diaries, those sorts of things are always good. But yeah, if you can, if you can't, it's just good for the brand. It can be seen as a marketing item. So that's a great way to equip, and I've said branded items. So like I say, this is not rocket science. So if you know this already and you're doing this, fantastic, you're doing an amazing job. If you're not, then hopefully it's something you can learn. Okay, so slightly deeper than that, more specific to sales tools, and I'm talking about documents and packages and that sort of thing. So templates are a great idea to ensure consistency. What happened a couple of years ago at East Coast Radio is that one salesperson would go out and see a client, and he was very creative, and he would put pictures and text and stats and research, and would deliver this proposal that looks phenomenal, spend hours on making this proposal to the client. And then another guy would copy and paste onto a Word document and put an old logo, and he would send it to the client. And there was an inconsistency with what was going out. And so we wanted to change that. So we created a standard template for a lot of the things that we do. One being the proposal, so that our introduction could be customized, but the format would look the same. So templates are a good thing to ensure consistency. Something that I do for training all new salespeople is I give them a needs analysis form. A lot of your job as a salesperson is to understand a client's business. And if you're just asking questions based on your knowledge and your curiosity, there's very possibly things that you would miss out. So in doing pre-call planning for a client, I would train the salespeople to write out their needs analysis questions and make sure that all of it was answered. They write the answers down, they take their notes so that they don't miss anything. So it's just a way of standardizing what you do to get deeper knowledge. Call scripts is another thing that you might want to put together. And as a sales team, you could, if you don't have them, that could be a script that you put together as a team, where you work on it together as a project, and you put a cold calling script together. How to call a small business. What are some of the best things to say? How to call a corporate, a bigger business, how to call a government department to try and secure spending, how to call an ad agency to secure spending, and have those scripts, which obviously people can make their own. But if you have a standard, it especially helps the newer salespeople that are coming in to have some sort of structure that they can operate, that they can meet that level. Creative concepts, obviously we want to try and brainstorm and equip our teams with creative concepts that they can sell. I have mentioned and noticed with a lot of client conversations recently that people are still doing their standard 30-second or 45-second radio adverts, but they're looking for more interesting content. So competitions, promotions, branded content that they can sponsor. So as management, our job is to provide those concepts so that salespeople can sell. Same thing with packages. You can do seasonal packages. You can do Black Friday packages, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Christmas, Easter, those sorts of things. Then you can focus on sectors. You could say, we're going to focus this month on DIY. A lot of people are doing DIY as they're coming out of COVID and coming out of lockdown. We did a survey for our listeners, and I think 60 or 70% said that over the next month or two, they're going to be doing a lot more DIY in the home. So you could say, okay, we're going to focus on DIY. As a sector, and you could create some packages, you could create some content and then go out to market with that. So those are the tools that you give that make a salesperson's job a lot easier. Once the campaign is complete, we like to do a post-campaign analysis for a bigger campaign if a client has done something bigger. And what that is just to capture what the campaign was, the descriptor, what their objectives were, who their target market is, what we gave them as a solution, if we can put a sample of the visual or the audio that we did for them, and then what the result was. And then we package it off. So if you do that for a DIY client and you have a great result and they have a 20% increase in sales, you can go without betraying confidential information, but you can take that PCA to another DIY client and say, we've run this with another DIY client. There's no reason why it can't work for you. So the proof is in the evidence that you provide, which is the PCA. The other thing that we do to equip our salespeople is that we put lead adverts on air. So we talk about why it's a good idea to advertise on the station. Obviously, that works just for your listeners, but it's a good thing to do, and we do it on an ongoing basis. Sometimes you get great leads, sometimes not so much. The other thing we do is we put client testimonials. So if we find a client that's had a great campaign, we record that and we put that out on the advert to try and solicit more leads. And then very similar to packages, we put presentation decks together. So it could be a hard copy where we're focusing specifically on digital or DIY or something like that. And they can take that hard copy to a client and they can go through it and present it to them, or it can be a digital version. So again, a lot of this you're probably already doing. So I see we've hit 12 o'clock. So I've got the last few slides we'll breeze through and then we'll open up for questions. So the next thing is support. So support is absolutely essential for a sales team. And it really is. The more I think about working in sales, in radio, and in general, but specifically in radio, it's very much a collaborative approach. It's very much something that you do where you work together as a team. And so the sales team needs as much support as possible so that they can be released to do what they do. This here is a very detailed X-ray of a salesperson when they're trying to do admin. I think that's very funny. I hope you do too. I can't see anyone's faces. So I'm assuming that there's lots of people laughing at that, because generally salespeople don't enjoy admin. There are some people that are in sales that do, but for the most part, salespeople don't enjoy admin. So I did a course called an MDP course it was a few years ago. And MDP is very similar to an MBA. It's the same topics, but it's done over a shorter period of time. And at the end of that, you had to create a thesis, a project, which addresses a need in your organization. So what I did is I did an analysis of how much time my team spend on admin, had interviews with each of them, worked out their admin time, and did a calculation based on that time. Then I used their closing ratio, how much time they saw clients, and what their time was worth from a business perspective. And I calculated that if we appointed 2 interns on a trial period to absorb all of their admin work, then it would free up more of their time, hours and hours per week. And that would then theoretically equate to, on their closing ratio, more business for the organization. That would more than cover the cost of the interns, as well as make more profit for us. Presented it to our senior management. They loved the idea. It was put into place. And now there were 2 more people employed on a permanent basis. So we went to interns. It was proved to be accurate. And now they're employed permanently because of that thesis that I put together. And so the short answer is you don't have to do that. But wherever possible, try and absorb admin tasks away from salespeople. I know in community radio stations, you're wearing multiple hats, so you're serving multiple roles, so that might not be possible. But if there's someone in the organization that's really gifted in admin, and hopefully they have some time available, they can absorb some of the admin tasks from the salespeople. I promise you it will have a great effect on them. So that's a good thing to do to equip your team. And we're coming into land with the last few slides, but basically this slide is just to show collaboration. So collaboration is something that does not happen naturally, especially in radio. I found one of the truisms across radio is that the different departments sometimes operate in silos and they don't always see the same kind of thing. Like the presenters think, without me, there wouldn't be a radio station. If there's any presenters here that don't think that, Please forgive me. It's a generalization. I know there might be presenters here, but in general, in my conversation with lots of presenters, they think, well, you know, we are the station. We're the face and the voice of the station. So, you know, without us, it wouldn't happen. Then you speak to the salespeople and they say, well, you know, the rude comment that salespeople make is we pay your bills. You mustn't say that. That's not going to win you any fans. But they will say we generate money for the station to pay for salaries and for stationery and for offices and whatever. So we're important. And then the finance people and the programming people and the marketing people and everyone will have their say. But really, it's not. It's about a well-oiled machine working together. In radio especially, you lean on so many other departments, so you have to collaborate and you have to make an effort to make that collaboration happen. It doesn't happen naturally, but it is so important and it works really well. Something that we've done to help that, we used to have interdepartment teas. So sales would host the presenters and we would provide tea and sandwiches and we would have a chat and get to know them. Then finance would host marketing and then news would host programming or whatever it was. And those just built good relationships between the departments. And the other thing we do is we give shared incentives. So if a producer of a show comes up with a great idea and we use that and and we sell it, we give that person a share of the commission just so that they have a vested interest. So yeah, whether that can work with you or not, it works well for us. Brainstorms are great, multi-department brainstorms where you get a presenter in the room, you get someone from marketing in the room, you get your PR person in the room, you get a salesperson in the room, and just throw ideas around. You probably do these already, but they work exceptionally well at coming up with fresh ideas. And then last topic that we will cover, and I've kept it last on purpose because it can be quite a sensitive topic. And even in the session yesterday, the question on compensation came up, and that was about selecting your team. So compensation is crucial when it comes to salespeople. Obviously, the organization has to do what works well for them. It's the same thing I said yesterday. You can't put yourself in a negative financial situation in any way. There's got to be balance in everything. But it is really important that salespeople be properly compensated. And compensation is quite an essential thing for a salesperson. And I'm generalizing, but generally there is a basic and a commission structure. The basic salary is lower and the commission structure is opportunity to grow. And there's just some points that I want to cover from that. Some people that I've done training for are not on a commission structure at all. They just get a set basic salary. Some people are on commission only. Some people are on a capped commission, so they only can earn up to a certain level. I can only give you my opinion, and I'm going to share that freely. It's completely up to you and the organization for choosing what you do. I cannot dictate what you do with your finances, but I know based on my experience what works. So my experience is a basic and commission works well because it takes time. Also, sales are very economy dependent, so there's good months and bad months. So this will vary, but the basic needs to cover some basic costs for the salesperson so that they can survive and feed their families, etc. It's very important. So that will at least buy them a little bit of peace of mind. Because can I tell you, the person that sells the most is a happy, well-adjusted salesperson. It is not the person that is under negative pressure, where they are getting phone calls from debtors and their partner is complaining that there isn't food in the house. And that is not, it is a motivation, don't get me wrong, like negative motivation, but it's not, that person will not sell as well when they're sitting in front of a client as a person who is comfortable and happy. I'm not saying overpay your salespeople either. They've got to earn their money through their commission. So that's one of my opinions. The other opinion is that you should never cap commission, ever. If you cap commission, you cap performance. It's as simple as that. So you can never say, we'll only pay you up until this, and anything over that you do that. Salespeople have the power to manipulate their figures. And so they will convince a client or not book a client in this month. They'll book it in the following month if you are capping the commission. So my honest advice is it's the wrong thing to do. It might seem like the financially wise thing to do. It's really not a good idea. Commission only can work. It can work if the commission is generous enough that it covers their basic costs. I'm nervous about commission only because a client could, I mean, we've had clients before that have booked a campaign that have canceled at the last minute because their stock is held up in the harbor. That's not the salesperson's fault, and yet they will suffer. In this time of COVID, our salespeople, and we've got a large sales team, I think we have 18 people in our department, and we have 12 people that sell directly. Of those 18, were all hurt dramatically. Their income was devastated, because at East Coast Radio, we have an average commission, basic was slightly below average, and a higher commission structure for overperformance. It's not geared for underperformance, and their basics not massive. So this time has been really difficult, and then they've earned next to nothing, if anything. So it's really important to have a happy, well-paid, motivated sales team. Don't overpay, like I say. It's got to be commission dependent. And then the last thing which I can say on that is it's a sliding scale. So generally we make it percentage based. So if you bring in a low amount, the percentage will be lower. If you bring in a higher amount, the percentage of that amount will be higher. But we also increase our percentage as they progress through their target. Again, we're running out of time, so I'll happily answer any questions specific to that, and happy to chat on an individual level with people to help set up a commission structure, or give you an honest opinion on your existing structure, because it's very, very, very important. And then the last thing before I finish off is just bonuses and incentives where possible. So what we do at East Coast Radio is, if you hit your quarter, so your 3 months collectively, or if you hit your year, there's a little extra incentive that we put in place for that. It encourages long-term thinking and forward planning, and also encourages the salespeople to stay with the team. And little incentive. So if you do a DIY package, then you have a 1,000 Rand or a 500 Rand or a 200 Rand DIY voucher that you secure through a barter or trade exchange, or that you purchase from one of the clients that benefits, or they might sponsor it, which is great. And then they get that prize. So it's a sense of achievement, it's acknowledgement, and then they get a little prize. So again, not rocket science, but really important. And then my last point is the not to do's. I've told you what to do. The not to do's: make sure that your targets are reasonable. If you have targets in place, I think it's a good idea to have targets in place, but they've got to be reasonable. If they are too far, that is the biggest demotivator for a salesperson. They won't even try as hard as they probably could. So please, reasonable targets. The other thing is, don't move the goalposts. Set their targets at least for a year or 6 months, and don't, if they hit that target, then change the target to something else. Moving goalposts and instability is the most demotivating thing for a salesperson. So don't mess with that. And with that long speech, I always take longer than I'm supposed to. That brings us to the question phase, and we're going to facilitate and open up the floor. You're welcome to switch off your mics and ask a question, or you're welcome to ask on the chat as well. But hope you enjoyed and gained some insight into equipping your sales team. But let's chat some more with some questions.
Hi, Brenden, it's Jackie from Impact Radio. Thank you so much. I just want to know, generally I encourage my salespeople to see at least 12 clients a week, just out of experience, that's what works. But during this COVID time, and people working remotely, we don't like to micromanage. I found it quite difficult to hold them accountable, with using the excuse that clients aren't available, etc. So I've changed that goalpost from 12 meetings a week to at least 3 Zoom meetings. I just want to find out from you personally, how can we better equip our salespeople during this COVID time, especially seeing, that management don't want us to see people face to face?
It's an exceptionally good question. I think a lot of people are leaning closer to their speakers to listen. And it's a very timely question, Jackie. Literally, East Coast Radio are going through the exact same thing right now. So we have had to manage that process. And it's a difficult conversation to have. So from our perspective, for March, April, May, June, we showed as much empathy and compassion as possible, and we didn't put any requirements. We've only recently allowed our salespeople to start seeing face-to-face appointments again. And also with absolute caution, we prefer, and only again recently, probably in the last few weeks, we've allowed external visitors to come into the station and have meetings there. We're preferring that though, just because It's a controlled environment. So people, when they arrive, they get the temperature and fill in the things, and they get scanned, and they have to wear their masks. Company policy, everyone in the building, doesn't matter if you're in a meeting, you have to wear a mask. So there's a controlled environment. Whereas if they go out to clients, it's the client's premises, and there are clients, some of my team have gone out and had clients who don't wear masks and they don't check anything. And so they feel unsafe. So back to the point of activity. As we've progressed out now, and I think everyone's been affected quite negatively with the impact of COVID, is that as a business, we need to get momentum happening again. So our guideline has always been 10 appointments per week. Some of the AEs are more senior, and so they see slightly more of the existing clients. Some of the guys that are newer see slightly more newer clients. But 10, I agree, 10 to 12 has kind of been our benchmark. If they see 8 and they've had a busy week, that's fine. And as we've moved out of COVID, what we started tracking, even while they were in lockdown, we still encouraged them to make contact with clients. Maybe not necessarily a business call, it could be an empathy call. How you doing? How you making through this, etc. But instead of capturing just the Zoom calls, they would capture the activity, any activity. So if they sent an email, if they made a phone call, if they made a Zoom call, if they worked on a proposal. So we would capture that activity, because what we didn't want, and some of the, you know what, some of my team, I would trust them implicitly. They could work from home for the rest of their life and they would still hit target. I absolutely trust them. The other, back to my point of boundaries, some of my team know that they need boundaries. If they left without boundaries, they would default to not doing anything. So what we have done is we've phased the activity up. So in the beginning, very similar to you, we encouraged some Zoom meetings or Teams calls or whatever the video, but it had to be a video call so that it was some face-to-face. And the same thing, we encouraged 3 to 4 in a week. We experienced some pushback from the salespeople where they're saying, oh, clients don't really want to do that. They're happy for a phone call. We got a great relationship. We're on WhatsApp. It's great. And that's fine. And I don't have a problem with that. But I also want to encourage them, and my word is momentum. We need to start building momentum to get back to normal. So the momentum that I encourage them and say, yes, okay, the client might say they're tired of Zoom calls or whatever, but I'm setting up Zoom calls with clients and they're taking those Zoom calls. I have multiple Zoom calls with clients throughout the week. I have lots of appointments with clients. So I know that they resist it because phone calls and emails and WhatsApp are so much easier. So we still push them towards that. And as the weeks progress, we let that number become higher. We literally have just moved to a phase of 2 appointments, face-to-face or Zoom a day. So we're back to our 10, and it's their choice. They can do face-to-face or they can do Zoom, and at least 3 prospecting calls a day. And so that could be an email, it could be a phone call, it could be a lead that's come in, but they've got to make contact with that person. And so we're finding that existing clients are still holding back. So the focus is big time on new business. So that's where those 2 appointments and 3, and we break it up in a day. You know what, there might be a day where they don't see anyone and not make any prospecting calls, and they're working on proposals or setting up their week, and that's fine. So it'll all average out in the week. But we find the time for empathy is still here, but the time for boundaries is coming back. And if I can go back to that momentum, if you can imagine pushing a car, that initial stage of pushing the car is really difficult. Once it's started, then it's a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And so that's our approach, is we want to come alongside them and we want to help them build that momentum. Perfect. Okay, good. Any other questions?
Sorry, if no one's going to ask, I'd like to ask another one. So
Go for it.
I do have, you know, I do have an activity sheet that I require the staff to fill out. Just because, you know, there needs to be accountability. So how do you create a culture of accountability without being
a micromanager?
Micromanaging, yes, because I do feel sometimes, you know, I don't want to cripple them, but at the same time, they need to take responsibility and accountability. And, you know, like you said, there is a little bit of pushback with regards to clients not wanting to have Zoom meetings. I understand that. But like, how do we create a culture of accountability without micromanaging?
Yeah. So again, a very good question. And literally my team walked into my office yesterday, obviously all social distance and masked and whatever, but so we have only just put a activity report. The activity report we started probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And that was just an email kind of spreadsheet that they would send through. And now it's become a physical document with slightly more detail. And that literally launched last week. And so they came into my office to say, what's happening with this activity report? Don't you trust us? And you know, we're not here to not make money and etc. And so what I said to them is, I understand, having presented to boards and presented to senior management, is that they want one of 3 numbers. If your figures are great, then the other 2 numbers lose the impact. And then you have lots of authority to say clients don't want to see me and I'm still doing the business. But if the figures are not there, unfortunately, our voice is not as strong. Then the very next thing that they want is pipeline. They want to see, what deals are you working on? What's in the pipeline? What numbers? What are you projecting? That's becoming day-to-day conversation. For that to be in place, the next number that they want is your activity, and that's a report of some sort. So if I can say, prior to COVID, we didn't do activity reports. Every now and again, we would check on the number of calls. We have full access to their diaries, and we tell them in their Outlook diaries, they need to put all of the appointments. So we can easily at a glance see where they are, and that's all great. And it's a transparency thing. So we've never had to do activity reports as such. But again, part of building that momentum is exactly that. And the conversation I had with my team is that we are existing in a gap opportunity. You know you are working, but it's not translating to figures yet. I'm seeing you that you're working, but it's not translating to figures. So in this interim period, we need to compromise. We need to say, okay, we don't like activity reports. We don't like micromanaging. We don't like being checked up on. We are all adults and most of us are parents and etc. But we have to admit that there is a problem. So the board who's looking down, they need a number to look at. So if they can't look at our figure, they're going to look at our pipeline and our activity. And it's a mature conversation, and no salespeople's going to be happy with it. But the guys that are actually working and are delivering, they will continue to do so. And it's just about managing their attitude towards it. And what I started the conversation out as saying, it's not going to change. The only time it's going to change is when our figures change. So we're going to have to accept it, but let's work around it. And so they mentioned things like clients don't want to do Zoom calls, and they chatted on WhatsApp. So I said, that's fine. Put that in the report. If you had a 1-hour phone call with the client and you spoke about amazing things, put that in your report. That's counted as quality activity. So if they want to hit target, they know they have to have quality activity. So if they're having quality activity, all you're doing is capturing it on a report. So it's not easy, but we're in a difficult situation, so we have to just do it. Any other questions? Jackie, any more from you?
Oh, maybe just one more. Okay, so let's say, because I've put activity like in place since I started at Impact 2 years ago. So that's always, that's just my style, right? But, you know, I don't like to micromanage, like I mentioned earlier. So let's say activity is not met, right? And so like the 10 meetings aren't met, and like the budget, they didn't make their budget. Forget about target, they didn't make their budget. What do you think, what do you guys do at East Coast Radio, like in order to, how can I say, encourage more sales without crippling the salesperson? And again, having that culture of accountability, because it's month after month.
And it's an ongoing thing. You're 100% right, and it's a very good question. And as a sales manager, it's something that you have to manage probably for the rest of your life that you're going to be in sales management. So it's good to find the best ways to do it, and it'll change as you have different people in your team, etc. But anyway, what we have tried, so my previous boss, who's no longer with us, she was a micromanager of note, and I don't even mean just activity reports. It was like every kind of detail, and I'm not. I come from a slightly more creative, charismatic. I dislike admin. In management, I have to do multiple reports and board packs and all sorts of things. So I force myself, and I do a good job because I know I have to do it. But I don't like it. So I became the filter between the salespeople and my previous boss. And so what she would do is she would put up everyone's activity in the sales meeting on Monday morning for the previous week. And she would say, oh, see, this person did this and this person did this. And it was almost like a name and shame situation, which I'm not a big fan of. I think if a person is under delivering on activity, it's a conversation. So it's always going to be a conversation, and it will start out as a nice conversation. And as things get better, then it'll continue being nice. And as things don't get better, it'll get more serious. So the conversation, and I would have one-on-ones with my team. If they're not doing well, it would be on a weekly basis. If they are doing well, then it would be touch base and a different kind of conversation. But let's say that the activity is not being met. So we would track it, we would see it in their calendars, and we would set up a meeting and say, how was last week? How did things go? What's the sense in the market, etc. And you can tell if generally they're quite negative about the sense in the market, then they resist to going out and seeing more people. It's just that way. The more positive people generally see more people. It just works out like that. So I would have a conversation, say, listen, on a mature level, we're on the same level. You know that your activity wasn't 100%. I'm also seeing your figures are not where they need to be. Your pipeline is not where it needs to be. What is your plan to do that? Have you got a reason for it? And it's a meaningful conversation. And then I make note of what they say. And so if they say, yes, it was a tough week, I was busy, I was working on proposals, etc., then I say, okay, that's cool. Just let's try and pick it up this week so that we can do it. And then if it repeats for the second week, then it's the same conversation. The tone is very similar. I don't start turning up the temperature until probably week 3 or week 4. But that's, again, just my leadership style. So we'll have another conversation. Oh, yeah, it was another tough week and clients just don't want to see me, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then if the third week happens, then the tone of the conversation changes in saying, I want you to be successful. I have worked here for a while, and I kind of understand the elements of what makes a success. And I can tell you now, the recipe of what's happening is not going to lead to success for you. So something has to change within this recipe for us to make sure we have a success. So what do you think needs to happen? And you know what? Salespeople are very good at telling you what you want to hear. They're amazing at doing that. And sometimes they need a wake-up call and a harsh conversation, and they turn around. Sometimes it's a repeat situation. But my pressure in the conversation changes. And then the other thing that I find is if that still doesn't have an effect, then we include another manager in the conversation, or an HR person, and then it becomes a more serious conversation. We never want to get there. We're hoping that through encouragement, motivation, and a little bit of firm talk, that it's going to change their behavior. But if it's not and it continues, and funny enough, I had a conversation with our MD this morning. There's 1 or 2 people that are on my team that are just taking a bit longer to get out of, to build their momentum. So we have a process called a performance improvement process. And what that is a weekly meeting. It looks at the performance, how it's tracked over the last few months. It ranks where they should be and where they are. Then they have an opportunity to share their reasons for getting to where they are. And then we put an action plan in place to address each of those reasons. And then we have a discussion about anything that could be a mitigating factor for that. So the 2 gents that are on my team are moving into a PIP process. Some respond exceptionally well to that. The time and the attention and the focus and the uncovering of issues, they love it. And within a month or 2 months, they rock it and they're out of it. We close the process and it's done. Others see it as a disciplinary situation and they resist it. And then after a month or 2, they accept it and then they hit the ground running and then they take off and then we end the process. Others, unfortunately, don't see it. They don't resist it. And maybe, I mean, I covered it in the yesterday's session, maybe they're not the right person for this particular role. And then the conversation changes. Are you happy? Are you happy in your role? Because we've gone through this process. Is this what you want to do? Is there something else maybe that you want to do? And maybe you're just doing this because you feel you need to. And then it's a different conversation. And then we might look at another manager absorbing them into their department, or at least trialing them for a period of time and that sort of thing. But ultimately, the quote that I used from Jim Collins yesterday was, get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus, and get the right people in the right seats. And that's the complete quote. And it's difficult, but at the end of the day, you don't want someone in a sales position that, one, is not happy, two, doesn't want to be there, and three, is not performing well. It's not benefiting them or you or the company. So you want to try and find the best seat for them on the bus so that they are happy and they do well and the company does well.
One last question. I'm so sorry. Your post-campaign analysis, you mentioned, you know, that you will do PCA for clients, yes. and you mentioned results. How do you particularly measure results? Because, you know, I don't know how to measure results on radio. How do you guys do it?
So there's some simple things which work well for some clients and don't with others. So the one thing is we do a reach and frequency run. For the more mature clients and the agencies, that will determine how many people potentially, based on your listenership, heard the advert, so how many it reached, and then how many times potentially they heard. It's a very theoretical kind of formula. I think you might know reach and frequency, but it's, for some clients, it's an indicator, and it will give them peace of mind. The smaller, what we call our direct clients, they couldn't care two hoots about reach and frequency. They couldn't care about that at all. What they care about is, did it work for us? And so those clients we identify early, and we set a structure in place early on. So they would decide what the metric is. So they could say, I want more Facebook likes. I want more people to visit my website. I want to sell more product. I want to have more feet through the door. And we identify those things as part of the campaign, and we check how realistic they are. We've sat with a car dealer where they say, I want to sell 200 cars this weekend. You've got a visitor behind your chair. I'm only laughing because I have two kids that do the exact same thing. Please don't mind. I'll tell you a story sometime later on about my son walking into a Zoom call naked. He's 6. That was fun. So where was I? Oh yeah, so we determined what it is. So if the car dealer said they want to sell 200 cars. So I said, how many cars did you sell last weekend? He said 7. So I said, well, that's not really a fair kind of thing. So you've got to get to a realistic point of view. The other thing that we do is we do vouchers. So if we link it to our website, and we say, hey, if you want to benefit from the 10% discount, you're going to go onto our website and download a voucher. They can track it. The other one, which is not as successful, is trusting the client to track it. And we say to them, listen, please get your salespeople to ask, where did they hear about it? But it's very unreliable. So the results are based on that, and then general feedback from our team internally. Awesome. Okay, so we have come to the end of our time. I see Dave has switched his camera on. I'm sure there might be other questions. Everyone is welcome to post them in the group chat. I think there might be questions in the chat that I haven't covered, Dave.
No, I don't think so. I think, Brennan, we've come to the end of our time.
There we go.
And I think we need to wrap it up. If there are further questions, you can either, send them to Natalie. She'll send them through to Brenden. We meet again, some of the same people, but there's a new group next week Tuesday. So it's Tuesday and Wednesday next week as well. So thank you very much for everyone who's been part of this. It's been great. I think we've learned a lot. My head is overexpanded. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks, Brenden.
So
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And any more questions, like I say, please send them to Natalie. I'm more than happy to answer them, or connect with me on LinkedIn and we can chat directly. I always want to help, especially sales managers. I think we need a support group. So have a great day. If you're taking holiday, have a great long weekend, and we'll see you for the next session. Cheers, everyone. Bye.